Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Tell me something only you know. Something paranormal or secret about your city, work, school, or whatever.
There is a Druidic cult operating in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario. They claim to have been founded by members of William Lyon Mackenzie's, not the Prime Minister, his grandfather, Hunters Lodges of 1837 rebellion fame. This is doubtful. It has been through several periods of inactivity and rebirth through the years. I've only been able to reliably trace it back to a group of World War I veterans of Irish, Scottish, and Breton descent. My father was involved in the 1960s iteration viaduct his involvement in the Ottawa street gangs at the time. The Yohawks, for any locals familiar with the history of the Britannia neighborhood. The actual Druidic order had a hands-off approach, generally sending mid-level initiates to join street gangs, music scenes, specifically heavy metal, Celtic cultural societies and Canadian patriotic groups to try and exert influence. An affiliated group was booking shows in the punk and metal scenes across the valley for about a decade. Even after things fizzled out in the 90s, though most of the people involved weren't aware of the Druid links. Things fizzled out in the mid-2000s, but I've seen stirrings indicating a possible revival. The nation is in peril, after all. Keep your eyes on Mount St. Pat. The first lid of Baylor's eye was lifted at a few recent underground gatherings.
My city has a secret layout of underground tunnels that were connected to each other during and were meant to be used as a secret way to reinforce troops and evacuate the wounded during the siege of Paysandu in 1864. Thing is that little to no research was conducted regarding the real layout of the tunnels, the most famous ones allegedly connecting the hospital to the battalion. Nowadays the police headquarters. So that's why local historians came up with the idea that they were used as a way to evacuate people secretly and reinforce troops. But in reality the layout is too maze-like. They were not efficiently built to reach one side or another fast enough. They are somewhat claustrophobic too. I don't know about 1800s military logistics, but I can't see how they would drag around crates of ammo or wounded on stretchers. Most of them have collapsed by now, and it is known that some of them lead to random basements in the old part of the city, which BTW are filled with Freemasonic imagery.
The Gilcher Building, an old office building in my town, is haunted. I don't necessarily believe in the spirits of dead people residing here on Earth. However, I do 100% believe that something is wrong with that place. During the day it's an office building for various businesses. At night, all the lights are left on, and it is very eerie. Gives a liminal space vibe, and constantly feels like you're being watched. When I used to clean that building, would constantly have this feeling, as if I were being watched by an old woman. I'd constantly look over my shoulder or peek around corners, imagining an old lady standing there. Never shared this with anyone. Despite this, multiple people who worked there at night came to me and mentioned that they felt strange, or specifically felt like an old woman or the Wicked Witch was watching them. One night, while I was cleaning, a man on a different floor took his own life. I didn't even realize why police and emergency services were there until the next day I was asked about it. One night I kept hearing footsteps and doors slamming. It was bad enough that I called security. When you look at the camera footage, you just see the doors open and slam shut on their own, then a few minutes later, you see me coming to look at them. That place scared the shit out of me. Glad I left that job.
It's not something that only I know, but it's something that very few people know about. 2004. An employee at a water treatment plant goes to work drunk and falls into the water tank. After 5 days missing, the worker's relatives are desperate. They search the police station and the morgue but find nothing. Then residents of those neighborhoods start complaining about something strange in the water, and many people get sick. 5 children died. The treatment company eventually discovers the cause. The police then hushed up the case at the behest of the delegate, who threatened the media with arrests and reprisals. TV channels, radios, newspapers, websites, and magazines were prevented from commenting on this. Instead, the delegate invented a false story that the person who died had been an extremely dangerous drug dealer who entered the water treatment plant to escape the police. Then a few years later, a guy blogs about all this and adds more details. In addition to finding out about the real deceased, he also found out that of the 5 children who died, one was his nephew. The dead boy's mother went into depression after losing her son. The guy ends the post by saying that he will investigate this and that he is looking for the name of the dead employee. Apparently, he never found out the name. It's a blog without many visitors and with some spelling errors, so the treatment company must be unaware of its existence.
I don't believe in aliens, but 2 guys in my childhood town were abducted in the 70s. Details of the story sound like bull. Octopus robots in a cigar-shaped ship took them and inspected them. But after they were returned and called the cops to report what happened, the cops couldn't find any drugs in either of their systems. Both passed lie detector tests with flying colors. Both gave the exact same account of what happened with extreme detail. They were interrogated separately, and one of the dudes has stood by his story for the past 40 years and even published a book about it. The other dude stayed out of the public eye and died a few years ago, I think. Again, I don't believe in aliens, but the reason I recount this is one of my aunts was actually in the area the night it was supposed to happen, and she remembers, distinctly, being in the car with her boyfriend and them both noticing weird lights and shit in the sky over the water. Where the abduction supposedly happened, the 2 dudes were fishing over the water at the time. It's not a well-known story even among believers, and there's pretty much nothing on the net about it as far as I know. For your information, the place is Pascagoula, Mississippi. Also, I think the dude who's still alive has taken several more lie detector tests over the years and passed all of them. I don't know. Either way, he clearly believes he experienced some X shit.
A friend's father was a Freemason. He had a library full of books about it and stuff. He died a while ago, but they kept all his stuff. Inside a shed, he had some file cabinets, among other things, and they decided to clean up some space, and they found under the pile of stuff a black casket. Apparently, he and his lodge used it for rituals. They freaked out and asked someone into the occult what to do with it, and she said to destroy and bury it. I moved to a new house and decided to borrow their truck to move my furniture around. And when I got there, they already had the casket on the trunk. Asked me if I could help them destroy it and go bury it somewhere far away. But I decided to keep it, told my friend about it, and he was cool with it, so now I have a nice centerpiece.
In the town of Trona, California, their population has gone from 7,000 to about 1,000. They are next to a massive government base, China Lake. It rivals Area 51 and in recent years has had earthquake epicenters located right under the base. They have black budget projects. They are experimenting with the town's population.
I believe you. I'm from Palmdale, California. I went to Tamarisk Elementary during the 1990s. My mother took me to places to be medically experimented on. I remember one instance where I was drugged and in a lot of pain. I was crying and said it hurt, and she was furious and threatened me. She said to never mention it again. She acted the same way when we went to a facility and we left behind my twin sister. I found out later that she died. I was gaslighted into believing she never even existed. I found out in my 30s from another sister whom I've never met. My entire life is messed up, a lot of strange and nonsensical abuse from authority figures, and my mom demanding I kept it secret. My family was Masons. My grandfather knew George Bush. I've been to his barbecues as a kid a few times, though I never met him. No one will believe me, of course. But I'm going to read that link, and to be honest, I don't really doubt that what's written in it is at least somewhat true, having scanned it. I used to think there'd be some kind of justice and these criminals would face consequences. I've given up on that. They're evil, the government is evil, everyone involved is evil. The feds that made this threat and are spying on us are evil too. I hate this evil world.
8 months ago, I was with my family on a weekend. Live in what was formerly the old American West. I have Native American blood, and my cousin has a Native girlfriend. Religious but never really believed in ghosts, until that day. Going out to a really fancy typical eatery, imagine Texas Roadhouse but not a franchise and more open. It's a long way away, about an hour, just to let you know, the food was worth it. I was bored in the car, didn't bring my phone, and watched the lights. Start to see something, at first I just think it's the car's shadow, until it covers a light. WTF? See its legs moving, it's some giant black thing following our car at 70 miles per hour, right alongside. Really little sister sees it and starts to flip her shit. Dad tries to look, but he has to pay attention to the road. It disappears. Phew. We get there, eat, forget about it. Go back, nothing happens, stare out the window intently looking for it, I can't recall if I saw anything. Although while down the road, we saw owls, lots, my cousins in the car behind us saw them too, Dad goes, what the hell, and then they're gone. Fast forward a bit, get home, Grandpa and Grandma had to leave to get to the hospital for a checkup and couldn't come. Grandpa dies the next day. Cousins tell me they saw strange stuff too. Was death or a Wendigo following and watching us?
The university I graduated from was haunted. I even ran into the ghost of a black soldier from like the First World War or before while walking back to my car. Apparently, from ghost hunters and others, a portal to hell exists somewhere downtown underground. There are labyrinths that were built to house the many thousands that died during a yellow fever malaria outbreak at the turn of the last century. My dad was the city's fire chief and he told me they could drive a fire truck down those tunnels, but never wanted to go down there. I guess there was the occasional electrical fire from old cables and stuff. But we also get a lot of UFO sightings too. Captured apparently, this was from my contact within the Freemasons. There is a UFO base located on top of the SpaceX facility. I think you can guess where. Caught pic related about a year ago, some strange things are happening.
Reality is bendable for your will and purpose. However, it's not an easy thing nor an effective thing to do. It's like manipulating people, but rather on a physical level, as in space and time. It's a hard process to explain, but anyone familiar with bending the minds of others to do your bidding, receive free kindness, or even lure them to their demise will have a grasp of how it's done. However much like strong-minded individuals, reality is hard to control and put in its knees. The best I was able to achieve was escape death unharmed. Great reality alterations are not without consequences, though. It knows when you altered it way too much, and it will punish you for cheating it. But I believe one can perfect such a thing and eventually alter whatever he wishes without being punished. Some might have already done that, but I never see anyone commenting about this. I will say that this doesn't work for people with hollow minds or people too innocent. Generally, anyone without a soul of their own cannot alter the course of destiny and reality around them.
I know that the ability to see and interact with the paranormal stems from the physical body. I was called a catalyst by doctors as a child. They would take me to different locations and ask me what happened. Murders, self-terminations, fires, landslides, tornadoes. It didn't matter what, when, or where I would see it all and pass it along to Spooked. When I scored well, or gave accurate retellings of events, they would offer outings to the movies or take out from local restaurants as a reward. After a few years they got parental consent to remove some of the brain alongside a few sessions of electric shocks. They did the shocks first, which ultimately didn't impact my scores on their usual tests. After the brain operation it stopped entirely. I lost my ability to see and hear anything out of the usual, and I've been living a normal life since. 20 years later, and I'm happily living my best free of any spookums. So, yeah, there's something physical that connects people with the non-physical.
I had a buddy Garrett way back years ago. He was a trailer park kid whose family sucked, and he got into hopping trains and doing graffiti and staying with shady characters. Otherwise, he was basically homeless most of the time. But he told me this story once. Train hopping. Hoping to make it to California to meet up with some people. Long way to go. Sleeping out in the grass or sometimes crashing with weirdos at their place. One night he's in the grass. This is in Missouri or someplace. I can't remember. Trying to sleep. Suddenly hears loud crashing in some nearby trees, which he had avoided instinctively. Freezes up, staring at the trees. Sounds like a group of men marching. Normally Garrett doesn't give a crap about anything, and he's a big dude who likes to fight, but he says he feels complete dread and is afraid to move. He hears someone shout, like a command, but he can't make out the words. There's another sound like a constant swishing. He's laying on his side and looking straight at where the sounds are coming from. They're approaching. Finally Garrett gets up the nerve to make a break for it and sneak off before he's discovered. But there's another shout, much closer this time, almost sounds like it's right there in front of him. Garrett drops to his stomach and just lays there. The marching sound stops at the tree line, but the swishing sound continues past him. As it does, the air gets thick and Garrett's head swims. Passes out. Comes to the next day. Hops the train and makes a mental note to avoid that spot from now on.
I used to play Runescape as a kid. I was still a noob, just barely gotten full mithril armor. I made a friend in Barbarian Village while killing some barbarians. We talked a lot. He seemed like a cool guy. One day after school I started playing and I got a private message from him telling me that he got a new spell and wanted to show me. He said to follow him to the South Varick Bank basement, and so I did. He told me he could give my armor a golden trim with this new spell. I've seen some around playing and they looked so cool. Hell yeah, I said, and gave him my armor. That day I became different, cynical, bitter, and full of hate. From that day on I knew I could not trust anyone in this world.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.